I have with me today an empathic and compassionate individual who is a registered social service worker and a licensed supportive counselor for women. It is my pleasure to speak with you today. Denise Marie, welcome.
Thank you so much. That was like a mouthful having to say all of those things. I'm like, okay, are we going to get there? But you're right. I identify as many things, and one of them being an empathetic counselor for women. So we got there.
To use coin the phrase of you get what you get when you get it.
Yes.
in the sense that, you can say you want something, you can go after something. If you get it at the wrong time, you're going to either lose it or you're not going to enjoy it. But when you get something, when you get it, when you're supposed to get it, it's like it's there. It's like it just falls in your lap. And that is applicable to people as well, that you run into the people that you need when you need to see them.
And my saying is always, there is no chance encounters. You meet people when you're supposed to, very divinely in some cases, and nothing is ever by coincidence. And that's something I've built that belief over time. Obviously, I didn't just have that belief. That's something I had to discover and really uncover about myself and uncover about the universe and the world and how it works as I believe it does. But even this encounter, I mean, this was not by chance. Come on. This is not just coincidence. There's a bigger purpose here. And so I'm even more excited to dive into the conversation with that in mind.
And I mean, our previous conversation, when we started to talk, you could obviously, if there were anybody watching in the room, which there wasn't, it was just you and I, it sounded like we had known each other for a long time. And the conversation just kept going and going and going. And we probably could have talked for hours, except that you had things to do. I had things to do. But it was as though, yep, this is the perfect timing for this. This is exactly when this should have happened. So
I agree.
What I'd like to do is talk about your story. So I'd like to understand from the beginning, how did your journey get you here? And I don't mean to this interview, although you could bring it to that point, but how did your journey get you into this calling? Because you started out as a social worker, and then you came to here. And when you read on your website, you talk about having a personal journey, having personal experience that you can relate to other people. Take me through that. Take me through where you were and how you got here.
Yeah. So I actually, funnily enough, I'll start out with saying I was not always a social worker. I was not always in the therapy realm. I worked corporate for a majority of my life, doing everything you're supposed to do. I went to school. I got all my accolades. I earned my cubicle. I had my corporate job for many years. I was doing all of the things. I had the house, the car, all this stuff. And I found myself extremely dissatisfied in a lot of ways. And I'm thinking to myself, what's happening here? Because I'm doing all the things. I'm doing what society tells me to do, but yet I'm deeply dissatisfied and I'm not happy. On paper, everything looks marvelous. People would be like, wow, Denise has got it all together. Look at her. Her life's amazing. But this really kind of at my core, I felt what's happening? I don't feel right. And I feel like I should be happy, but I'm not. And I need to explore that a little bit deeper. And of course, I had a lot of unprocessed trauma. And just as a trigger warning here for anyone watching that might be sensitive, I did suffer some abuse during childhood. I was quite young, 8 years old, and I had never dealt with that. I just shut it down, and I just never talked about it again until 21. So you can imagine during my formative years, your sense of safety is just completely knocked out, just knocked askew at this young age. And I never dealt with it, and I tried to go to therapy once, and it was just a complete cluster. Myself and the practitioner really didn't hit it off. He was kind of like, well, just get over it. It's been enough time now. And I'm like, is this what therapy is? I don't understand. And so I thought, okay, well, therapy is as BS, I'm just going to stop. And I never went back. And it wasn't until probably, even though I only just started talking about what had happened to me at 21, I still never dealt with it. So it's living in my body, and it's manifesting itself in all these ways. And I'm trying to fit myself into a box of society and do all the things I'm supposed to do, to not have to feel any of that, to not have to deal with any of it. But it came to a real head probably, oh man, I would say late 20s. It came to a complete head, maybe even later than that. I could have been early 30s. And I just had this complete meltdown one night. And so I call this, and I've labeled it, my enough is enough point in my life, where everything that I had never dealt with came up all at once. Everything I had never dealt with as a child, all of the trauma I went through, being bullied in school, being treated poorly by other people, all of my victim mentality, everything just came up all at one point. And it completely shut me down. And I thought to myself, and my partner is incredibly supportive. He's incredible and amazing. And I adore him. And he was just like, what is happening right now? Like something's got to give, Denise. Like you've got to do something. And I thought to myself, he is right. I have to do something. So the next day I went online, therapist near me. I literally Googled it. And I found my therapist based off a picture. I saw her face. I'm like, that's my therapist. I called her and I got myself into therapy. And anyone that's entered therapy ever in their life knows this is very scary. There's so much fear of the unknown. And that fear of the unknown, I hadn't yet learned that fear of the unknown can actually catapult you forward. That's something for further along in the conversation. To me, unknown was very scary. And I was having a real, like, my ego was having a temper tantrum, crying and screaming, don't do it, Denise. Just everything's fine. You're fine. And you almost like convince yourself in a way, like you don't need therapy because you're fine. Like, and I'm like, no, you're going, you're going to go. And through the process of therapy, I had a very beautiful spiritual awakening. Now, it didn't happen all at once. Obviously, I had a lot of trauma to process. I was in this safe space where I could just say all these things and get all this stuff off my chest and learn new experience and gain new perspective and all the traditional things that you usually have during therapy. It was very transformational for me. But the piece I was not expecting was the spiritual aspect. That knocked me off my toes. I was like, what is spirituality? Because, and I think we talked about this prior to our interview, spirituality to me, I thought it was very in a box, like religion. Spirituality is religion. And I came to learn very differently, very, very quickly through therapy that it was so much more. And I didn't have to like believe things in a certain way or restrict myself in a box. And I just started cracking wide open. And I was on a knowledge quest, if you will, to understand what spirituality meant to me and to uncover it. And it just became this beautifully organic part of what therapy meant to me. And it's now what therapy means to my clients as well. It's a really important part of what I banged myself. It's a really important part of what I do and the work that I do with my clients. So that's kind of like big picture. So I'll leave it at this point to you to dig deeper with me because I could keep talking for an hour.
Well, that's fine. What's funny is that the notes that I've taken, you have touched on all of the things, at least three key pieces that I want to talk about. So that's fantastic. You've introduced the segues and the segments that we need to talk about. So the one thing that I want to talk about, because it's interesting how at the beginning you had dismissive therapy, let's call it that,
yes,
where it's essentially, don't worry about it. It's nothing. It's not important. Just get rid of it. Just forget about it. And then you went to another therapy where it was, open up. Let's go. Take it. Just dump. I will admit that I've also been through therapy, and when it started, it was quiet time because I always thought, like in your case, you have all these ideas in your head, and it's not just a fear of the unknown. It's also that concept that you've built watching TV and watching all these other programs and stuff, or listening to radio or whatever, where you've heard that the therapist is the one that comes out and tells you, here's your problems and let's solve it this way and let's do. And no, good therapy starts with listening. Mm-hmm. And so the person I saw sat there and I sat there and I thought, this is a game. Let's see who breaks first. 2 days, 2 sessions worth of silence before on the third day I said, okay, so how do we start this? And then it started the guiding. Well, why don't you tell me where we start? Mm-hmm. Oh, we're going to play this game. And it wasn't a game. It was just suddenly I started to talk. And then, okay, so talk more about this. Mm-hmm. And it's all it was a guiding process, but it had to start with me. And in the sense that if you want to be healthy, you want to be, and this is in your case as well, you reach that pinnacle of moment, that emotional state of I've had enough. Mm-hmm. Then you need to do something about it. And if you don't feel that, it's never going to work. If somebody says to you, you need to fix yourself, you need to change, and you're in a mental state of, screw you, I'm not doing this.
Exactly.
You're not going to get any value out of anything that happens because you'll balk at it, you'll fight it, you'll argue with it. You may see a couple of little sparkles that I like that idea. I'm going to try some of that. But mentally, there's no desire to make any changes because I'm good, I'm fine. As you said, your ego kicks in and kicks his little feet and says, I'm fine, I don't need any of this crap. And if you're not there. So my experience of sitting for 2 sessions in silence for an hour, 2 hours of this was that challenge of, am I ready for this?
That's
I
it.
need to be personally ready to start this walk because, like you say, your ego comes in, all the mental exercises you go through to say, I'm fine. Why am I here? Fall away as you sit and realize it is up to me. It's my choice, my decision. And getting there is the first part of the battle.
Mhm.
First part is to say, am I ready for this? So from your conversation, you mentioned that societal norms and societal requirements made you feel, put you in this position of, I should ignore the past. I should do what I'm doing. None of this is making me happy, and I feel like crap. So I want you to talk to me about, and you coined the phrase, supposed to culture. I'd
Yeah.
like you to talk me through that.
Yeah, and this is a new term and a new verbiage that I've coined that really fits all of the pressure. And yes, I work exclusively with women, but this applies to men, to non-binary folks, just folks in general. This pressure to be a certain way, society dictates you should or you must. I call it like you're born and then you get your society handbook of life. It's like given to you. Here you go. Here's everything you're supposed to do. Follow the path. This is the route to happiness. Right here. Just do it. Follow it. And I think the term happiness kind of drives me bonkers sometimes too, because what is happiness? It's individual to everybody, but we are led to believe that if we just go to school, get married, have a partner, have a job, get a cubicle, work hard, hustle, 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 don't take breaks, don't cry, don't, big girls don't cry. Think of these things that we hear all the time. There's no crying in baseball, like all this, the stuff of don't be emotional, don't listen to your intuition, focus on logic. All of these things are encompassed by society that says this is how you're supposed to be, which is why I call it supposed to culture. And it really combines everything from patriarchal influences, toxic beauty standards, hustle culture, capitalism, consumerism, buy, do, just continue to flood your mind with as much as possible so that you aren't able to sit down and ask yourself, what am I here to do? What am I, Denise Marie, here to do? What am I, Mary Johnson, here to do? Because there's nothing scarier to society than people that are really connected to their soul, to their intuition, and following that versus just following the path. There's a lot more to gain if we just keep our blinders on like horses, right? Just follow the path, do what you're supposed to do. And I promise you'll be happy at some point. And if you're not happy yet, you're just not there yet. Keep going. Just keep doing more of the same. And we all know what it means to continue doing the same thing over and over again. It yields the same results. It really takes you to do something different and to rip that blindfold off. As I say to my clients, like that's part of the work together we're breaking up with supposed to culture. We're ripping off the blindfold and we're starting to see things for what they truly are. And that is, we have a lot more power than we think we do. Power to influence, power to make decisions, power to make things possible in our lives. But a lot of times, and this is for me true, I lived so deeply in victim mentality, like life was happening to me prior to therapy. That's why I believe these two things really are so interconnected, is because through that process of therapy and that spiritual awakening, I learned that I could make things possible for myself, that all these things weren't happening by chance, that I could influence them by kind of influencing my own vibration and influencing how I saw the world. And by coming from a different place of possibility, all of a sudden possibility is possible because you're magnetizing it. Mm-hmm. But you got to start by ripping the blindfold off and seeing supposed to culture for what it is. And this influence of you're being influenced constantly. You're being conditioned constantly from the time you're old enough to know words. Like if you could just, go back to when you're a child. I mean, a small baby, before they know any conditioning, is just experiencing the world through the lens of intuition, through the lens of their soul, through the lens of who they're meant to be. And then the conditioning starts. And then you get more and more conditioning until, again, for me, I got to the enough is enough point, and I'm like, I need to just like take the hammer to this foundation and relearn what it means to be me outside of supposed to culture, outside of what I'm told is correct, because I know what's correct and I need to follow that path.
Yeah.
Makes
yeah,
sense?
and it's culturally focused. I'll say that because us, the North American way of thinking, the Western way of thinking, has a specific supposed to handbook, as you call it. And I love that idea that it's the handbook of, because you you realize when you get some form of awakening that you'll walk down the street and you'll look, and it's as though people are gray. They're not colorful and vibrant. You'll see a few, but most people sort of walk along the same path. It's almost like seeing that Apple commercial of all these people in gray outfits all walking at the same beat and cadence, and they're all the same until one guy gets creative and it's yay, and he starts walking against the crowd. But when you look around, you see people are doing something like that. They sort of all moving at the same pace. So the North American culture, that supposed to culture, is one way. I know that other, there's probably an East Asian culture that has the similar mentality, but it's another handbook that's very much the same. And it's not much different in the sense that you look at it from not the details, but the generality of this is what your societal norms are, be this. Mm-hmm. And it's not always you. Much like medicine, we talked about that medicine is very generalized. And what they're beginning to find out is that medicine should be individualized. Mm-hmm. Every human being is slightly different. So every medicine, every treatment, every illness, everything affects that individual slightly different. And the treatment should be slightly different. So in the same way, our mental experience of the world, we shouldn't be treated, this is, cookie cutter, here's your therapy. It goes A, B, C, D, and then you walk out and you're fixed. Mm-hmm. And we both know there's no fixed. It's awareness and an alteration of our own perspectives that make us better than what we used to be. We're out of that book, mm-hmm. and we become individualized. And to that end, you mentioned spirituality a lot. And what I'd like to get into is your perspective in more detail on spirituality. You've said that it's not religion, the organized religion, but to some people it is.
Yes, of course.
To a degree, or to a great point, that's mm-hmm. their strength, is that pillar of religion. But spirituality is broader than that. And yes. I know we had a conversation about the extent of spirituality and that belief of changing your goals, changing your world around you, in the sense that it is mostly in here and mostly a part of your connection to everything else. So if you could go into detail of your perspective, your personal beliefs around spirituality and how it can be leveraged for health reasons, for mental health, for those people that are in distress.
Yeah, for me, spirituality gave me, it helped me restore my faith, my hope, and my optimism. Because at that point, and I think I was like self-proclaimed like glass half empty person. Like, I am a glass half empty person. I was like so proud of being a pessimist for some reason, which is very bizarre looking back on it now. I was in a totally different place in my outlook. But that connection to spirituality and knowing that I was a part of something bigger, that I wasn't just individual Denise with the world happening to her, that I was a part of something much grander, like a fabric of the universe, and I wasn't just little old Denise. I was a beautiful part of I'm going to get emotional, a beautiful part of this fabric that is the universe, and the role that I played in it and the influence that I could have. That connection to that spiritual piece, that spiritual awakening, restored that faith and hope and optimism, and allowed me space and opportunity to realize that the glass is whatever I want it to be. Really, it's up to me to determine how the glass is. It can be anything. And knowing that, and again, as I mentioned too, understanding possibility and understanding that we're energetic beings just in general. Like, this whole world is energy. I'm energy. Is anything ever real? Like, even real? Like, or is something only real because I have a context to attach to it, or I have a construct for which to fit it in? These are some of the existential questions that were coming to mind during this moment. But what I realized is that understanding that we're all energy, we're all vibration, we're all frequency, and it's very important to, as you're exploring your own spirituality, understanding how that works, like how your own, like if you're coming from a place of love and hope and optimism and you have this vibration emanating, you're obviously going to see the world in that way, and you're going to magnetize similar things to you. And that was a big part of my spiritual growth as well too, is understanding that and knowing that the more I kept myself feeling like I was a victim, the world was like, yeah, you are a victim. Look at all the ways. Look at all these dozens of ways you're a victim. And I kept seeing it. It's almost like I came to this understanding that my brain is almost like a supercomputer, and whatever I program it with is what the feedback I'm going to receive. And this is something I share with my clients all the time, because I find that they're often on the precipice of a spiritual awakening of their own, though they don't have the verbiage for that. So understanding that piece, this everything is energy, that we're all unified and connected, that it allowed me to like drop a lot of my judgments as well too. I found that was a really important piece of my spiritual growth as well too, is I used to be very judgmental. Although if you had asked me at the time, I would have said, no, I'm so open and understanding. No, I was unbelievably judgmental and green with envy, comparison, like comparing myself to everybody else. And again, I think that's all encircled in that victim mentality piece. But for me, that spirituality meant like, no, like I don't need to compare myself to anyone else. It's okay for me to be incredibly unique, one of a kind. I can stand out like a sore thumb. I don't have to fit in. It allowed me to let go of a lot of attachment as well too, I think is a big piece of what spirituality means to me. Letting go, being able to let go, like let go of past trauma, let go of the need to be perfect, let go of, my attachment to things too. I think I held on to a lot of things, items, material items. I could let go of everything and just start living a life that felt really good to me. And of course, if you can't see it in my office right now, it's surrounded with just different crystals and books and all kinds of like little things that are a really big part of my spiritual growth as well too. Meditation and mindfulness. Like if you had told me that I would be meditating 10 years ago, I would have laughed and been like, I can't meditate. Who can shut their brain off like that? But as we know, meditation isn't shutting your brain off. It's practicing non-attachment. So I think that's a big piece of spirituality, is being able to practice non-attachment and having faith and hope and optimism that the path will illuminate. All you have to do is continue to take steps forward and to continue to follow your intuition and your gut instincts and reconnect to that, understand how your intuition works, and continue to follow the way, because the way will show itself. Yeah. But of course, you don't know that until you've had this sort of spiritual kind of cracking open, if you will. But that was my experience anyway, in my belief system.
So is forgiveness a part of your spirituality, and I don't mean just the general sense of forgiving, but in the sense of, in your situation, from the abuse, do you forgive those involved, and do you forgive yourself? Because yes. I know key to most people's trauma is not the external, but it's the internal, that they've put a label on themselves that it's my fault. Mm-hmm. I'm the reason for all of these things happening. And yes. that's a key piece that they don't let go of, as you said, that letting go, but there's also that sense of self-forgiveness. So is forgiveness part of your spirituality? Yes.
100%. And I remember the day I finally was able to forgive the person that abused me all those years ago. He's long passed away now, and he had already passed away before I forgave him. Like, death wasn't enough for me. I was letting my healing for a long time be contingent on him being sorry. I was giving my power away in that way. Like, if he knew what he was doing, like, how dare he should be ashamed of himself. He should be living a crappy life. He should take responsibility and accountability for this. And he's probably not even thinking about me, but I'm putting all of my healing on somebody else. And the moment I forgave him, I was like in my bedroom, just sobbing. And I walked out and I hugged my partner and I said, I forgive him. And he's like, I don't know ever what's happening anymore. Like, who do you forgive? Like, you need to give me some context here. And it was just this feeling of like, I forgive him. I forgive myself. Cause you're right. I blamed myself for a long time. Like, I was blaming 8-year-old me. Like, I should have known better. But I mean, of course, this perpetrator had every toy, game, video game, every cool thing, all the cool snacks, every child's dream. They had everything. So of course I wanted to keep going back to it. So much of me blamed 8-year-old me. Like, if you had just stopped going, if you had told your parents, if you had said something, he could have been stopped earlier. And how many people suffered because you didn't say anything? And just having compassion and understanding, you only know what you know when you know it. It allowed me to find that self-forgiveness, and allowed me to find forgiveness for him as well too. Because again, like you just never know what people experience. And I understand this now. I can look at his life and wonder what led you to this. You weren't born this way. This is the result of something that maybe happened to you. At the time, I couldn't see that. Spirituality allowed me to understand that he had a history too. Mm-hmm. Something transpired in his own life. And that helped me with the forgiveness as well too. But that took time. Like I had to get to the point where I understood that. It wasn't immediate.
So for you, externalizing that your spirituality to others, to everyone else involved, in other events, not just in that event, but in other events as well, do you find there's a necessity to go that far external, or can you simply allow for the fact that everything is different, like energies and the way they move through the environment, through what we call reality? It can be different, and allow for that and just leave it at that, as opposed to trying to make sense of things by saying, something happened. This individual is angry today because something's happened. You're placing your value system and your context on the external, when in fact what you need to do is just simply, my perspective of it is this, and whatever's going on is whatever's going on. And sort of, as you say, kind of release yourself from that need to analyze. I understand, because I do it myself, that analysis of the world around. I want to understand the context. I like to say, I'm not aware of what the context is, but my brain starts churning and going, but I can figure it out.
Yeah.
What I need to do is go, no, stop. It is simply what it is. A tree grows because it grows, and a branch dies off on that tree because it dies off on that tree. And I do not need to become a biologist and understand that tree or all trees in general just to know that that's going to happen. And it may not happen with the next tree, or it may happen, and step away from it and stop that. I need to understand the world around me, because you don't. You're in it. You're a part of it. Like you say, you're an intrinsic part of it. You're a colorful, beautiful part of everything that's going on. Understand this part of it, and don't worry about the rest of it, because it will happen. It's going to happen. Even when you go to sleep, it's still happening. You don't get to figure out all that stuff, and you don't need to. It's too much weight. It's a different form of the supposed to culture, in the sense that you're supposed to figure it out. No, you're not. Stop.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, this element with this one big one particularly, that was important for me to have that ability to be compassionate and ability to understand that, he's a product of his own environment. That was an important, and not necessarily to figure out every little active part of it, right. But for that one specifically, because it was the weightiest trauma that I had, that was an important part of the healing for me. But right. To your point, with other things, and this is hard because the brain wants to overthink. It wants to overthink so badly. It's like there's comfort in overthinking. If I could just figure out every little, and I think that's a lot of where anxiety comes from, this ability to be like, if I can just figure out everything that's ever going to go wrong ever in the rest of my life for the rest of time, then I can feel like I'm in some sense of control. And that part I've been able to let go a lot of. I'm a human being. I'm not perfect. Not even Mary Poppins was perfect. So I understand that it's not going to be 100% right all the time, but I am allowed to sometimes say, it is what it is. And I can't control it, but I can control me, my behavior, my action, my responses. That's another thing that spirituality gave me, was my understanding of I'm the only one I can really influence at the end of the day. And if I keep trying to influence everybody else around me, I got to keep spinning my wheels. So just influence yourself. But that's hard, because you become stuck in your set of ways. Like Dr. Joe Dispenza said it best. You become a habit. You are a habit.
You're a bad habit to break. Yes.
Yes. And one of his books is all about breaking the habit of being yourself. And a lot of that is deconditioning. And a lot of that is unlearning a lot of this stuff and learning to just be like, okay, what is within my control, and focusing more on that. But yeah, that piece for me, the big one, I needed to understand his perspective to be able to truly let it go. And it worked for me. That one works for me.
But as you pointed out, for other individuals, you may take them on a different road, a different path to get there. Yes. Let them guide, let them point at a path, and you can walk with them to ensure that they feel safe, they feel secure, they don't feel like they're doing this alone and are traumatized by the experience of walking into the dark, right? And dark, not the negative dark as in the place that's not illuminated.
That's it.
a lot of the stuff we don't know is a sense of illumination, that we don't know it, or it's obfuscated. It's blocked off and we're not quite sure what it is because we can't quite see it. And your purpose with these individuals that you work with is simply to slowly push aside the thing that's blocking the view so that they can see for themselves without you making it your vision for them. It's their vision that they just needed assistance pushing aside the nonsense, the possibly the supposed to culture, possibly just their own self standing in the way of what they need to see to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I use a lot of that like terminology or verbiage. We do this hand in hand. This is so collaborative. You're not alone. I am there with you. I will hold the light. I will hold your virtual hand if you need to do it. But no, you're not going into this dark space on your own. I'll bring the light. I'll bring it. And it's okay to go there. And my client's emotional safety is everything to me, because before you can go there, you need to feel a sense of safety. It needs to be a safe space to be able to feel like you can do it, because the nervous system needs to be already in a state of calm, in a state of zen. You need to kind of be in a good headspace and a good body space to explore some of these things. And a lot of my clients are very scared to go there. They always say, I'm so scared to go there. I'm so scared to go there. And then at the end, they're like, I don't know why I was so scared. It was okay. You were there with me. I didn't feel alone. I felt supported. But it is scary to think about, because it's like we tuck all these things into the darkest corners of our mind, and we put them in boxes and put boxes on top of that box, and boxes and boxes and boxes. And the idea of unpacking it and looking at it is very scary, especially if it's, if there's stuff connected to childhood, because then you just become that child again. And it's, but then the beautiful part that happens is you become available to support the inner child. You become, by I support you, you then are able to support the inner child. And that work is profound, but it's a little scary to get there.
Well, also the dark places in your own mind, if you're trying to do it yourself, you're self-processing, it's emotion-based.
Yes.
And it's difficult to articulate emotion in your head. And if you're only thinking about it, it's emotion-based. And so your head isn't able to deal with it. Once you talk to someone else, you share, you are articulating, which means your brain switches to logic mode and you process emotion through logic. And all of a sudden why was that scary? All of a sudden you understand from a logic perspective what that emotional side was all about. And by having somebody that you feel safe to articulate those deep, dark, black, scary emotional pieces, you're now able to walk out and go, okay, now I have an understanding, like you say, needing to understand, even in the simplest form, simply because you've allowed logic to take a look at it. But you can't on your own go there, because either you become the crazy person who walks around and you talk to yourself and you're talking out loud. And that's really not going to help, because now logic gets associated inside your head with that, just the processing. And that shouldn't be how logic works in your head. Logic should be about making sense to someone else. If you're trying to make sense to yourself, your brain, try articulating what's running in your head right now. It's difficult because it's noise, it's feeling, it's sounds, it's colors, it's pictures, it's things. And basically you'd go, that's what comes out.
Yes.
To me, that just made sense. I know exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
To you, it makes no sense. And so I imagine that with your clients, you're guiding somewhat there as, I'm the interpreter, speak to me, articulate to me, and allow your logic to make sense of those things yourself, but feel safe that it stays only with me. I'll forget it in 2 weeks. We don't need to worry about it. I'm not going to write a book and talk about my clients. None of that stuff. It's simply a matter of, this is your way of helping yourself to articulate for yourself.
Yeah. And I call that, it's a very, very important part of my process. And I've labeled it as emotional show and tell. And that's how I describe it to my clients, especially if they're considering working with me. We jump on a call just to, is this the right fit energetically, emotionally, intuitively? And I always say, like, the first piece of this puzzle is your emotional safety is everything. And it's going to be a really big emotional show and tell. And it's going to feel like it makes no sense. You're just going to basically throw spaghetti at the wall. Like, this and this and this and this and this and this. And it's not going to make any sense, but it doesn't have to. It's coming out in the way that it's meant to come out. And I just want you to start talking. And I'll lay that out for them right at the get-go, and kind of make them aware that this is that first piece. It's very much like, here's all my stuff. Let's look at it, and really not even chronological order, like one thing to the next. And from there, then the journey starts. Then we can start to get into the nitty-gritty. Then we can move on to the next stage and really start the walk and start the perspective exploration and everything that needs to be done on their terms, at their pace, and working collaboratively. But you have to have the emotional stuff first. Just like, here's the things, because for many people, it's just been living here.
Yep.
And you don't tell anyone, and you don't share it with anyone, even your friends. You're like, I just can't tell anyone this. And so there's so much relief and release and catharsis just from, here's the stuff, and trying not to make it make sense.
Do you use, other than conversation, do you use other techniques? I know that some psychiatrists, psychologists use expression techniques. So draw a picture of how you feel, write a story of what's going on in your head. Again, it's a process of articulating it through logic, taking that dark place that you've overcreated, because as you said, you overthink, you're always processing. But when it's emotion related, or it's historical, it's memory related, it's always being reprocessed and reprocessed and reprocessed. And sometimes the emotional state is worse and worse and worse. And as you say, you bury it and bury it and bury it, and it just festers. And until you are in the process of allowing them to actually speak it out or write it out or draw it out, so that they see how they felt. And then they also see how much more they piled onto it.
And so much of the work that I'm doing is having them understand certain things through childhood, like having them write the story. If there's something specific like that, having them do a journal prompt where they go back and they put themselves in that space again. Like, imagine yourself in your childhood bedroom, sit on the floor, have your pen and paper, imagine yourself in brilliant detail, what you felt like, what was going on, and write it down. Allow it to free flow. There's so much power in journaling. People, like my clients, always roll their eyes like, oh, journaling. Like that's a cliche therapy thing to say. But this is where your subconscious comes to life. It's important to set that intention, to set that mood, to set that tone. And I mean, some people are like, oh, I'll just do it on my phone. But there's just something to be said about like pen to heart, to soul, to subconscious, to putting it on paper. And so much more comes out that way.
Yeah.
Because they're not thinking, they're just writing.
I am so behind you and journaling. I'm happy to hear that you bring your clients to doing that kind of work, because in my past, that was what was suggested. I drew pictures and I wrote. And the pictures I drew helped immeasurably to look at what my brain was saying was going on. Yes. And allow people to write, or if if they feel more comfortable to draw, sit on your floor and draw the picture of your past, draw the picture of the incident, draw the picture of whatever was going on, whatever is going on in your head, and then looking at it together.
Yes.
They first have to feel safe to look at it themselves. And then if they are willing to show you, and you see this thing, and okay, 911.
Now I get it. And it starts to be like, I feel like when I'm working with clients, I almost start to see them like they come to me in their individual puzzle pieces. But then as I understand more about them, I can put the picture together, and I can do it. I mean, that's part of me being a professional, but it's like I can do it and understand all of these pieces collectively coming together to understand the bigger picture before they can. But I start to see it come together, but you can't see your own stuff. And that's why therapy is brilliant, because it helps you to see your stuff in a new way. Another thing I do with my clients often, and I'll tell them this right from the beginning, is start to become, especially as we begin this process, become mindful if you're having dreams. Write them down. Keep a little notepad beside your bed and scribble like, I don't know, I saw a fly in my dream, whatever the case. But I also believe that your dreams are your subconscious bubbling to the surface, asking you to look at things. And I've got this really neat practice where I wake up in the morning and I call it like the in-between. I don't know why I call it this, the time between like when you actually like stir and you open your eyes. If I've had dreams, that will be the time where I try and remember them and ask myself, what is my dream trying to tell me? And oftentimes I can figure it out real quick, but I think that process is also a really neat thing for people to do, to just be like, what am I being called to look at here? Because again, this is the subconscious using its voice. So if you can become more mindful of that, and I do a lot of, and this came really organically where I started doing some dream analysis with clients. They're like, what do you think it means? Google says it means this. I'm like, well, what do you think it means? Like, let's not ask Google. Google doesn't know you personally. It doesn't know your subconscious. So you tell me, what do you think? And all of a sudden they start talking, and it becomes another catalyst to get them talking about things as well too.
So what I found, I like the idea of supporting dream analysis. And what's funny is that having an external view of a dream with somebody who's rational minded and looking at you, have already talked with you and walked you through a number of things, to hear a dream and say, what's your perspective on it? And they'll tell you, like I'm saying this because I've also gone through this experience of taking a dream. And I looked at a dream. I had a dream where I was running up a mountain and then a mountain lion was there and it felt threatening. And I was, there's a mountain lion and I don't understand. So I'm thinking the mountain lion is all my issues. And here I am, I'm running up the mountain to try and solve this. And the person I was working with said, what if you're the mountain lion? You would not believe, and I got it again. I get the chill up the back of my neck that I went, holy crap, that changes the entire perspective of the dream, because if I'm that, then it's things that are coming up at me. And as the mountain lion, I'm defending myself. I'm whoa. And it changed the conversation for the next hour about that, because taking a different tack on a perspective. And then the key piece to the conversation in a dream is every single thing in your dream is you. Everything is you. Because you're not dreaming about somebody else. You're not connected to somebody else's head and you're going, oh yeah, I'm dreaming about, Taylor Swift I want to be with Taylor Swift. No, Taylor Swift is a part of you. There's an aspect of you that is Taylor Swift in your dream. It's that your brain is dealing with and saying, so the Taylor Swift you're looking at is maybe really successful. And what you're thinking is I could be really successful. I could be like this. It's that kind of conversation that needs to be, like you look on Google and they say dream analysis. Oh, a bird means this and water means this. No, it doesn't. Not for everybody. Water to me could be, I'm feeling sweaty, and I'm sleeping and feeling sweaty. And that's where water comes into the dream. It's my brain going, why are you wet? Somebody else could be, they just had a bath and they go to bed and that's why they're dreaming about water. It's just something that's in their head at the time, but it's all about them. So again, phenomenal. I liked it. The writing piece. I love that the dream analysis and being the second viewer, being on the ride with them, talking them through and giving them that alternative perspective on things.
That's it. And there was something I thought actually while you were, and this is funny, while you were saying that, talking about thoughts, this was another part of my spirituality, is understanding I am not my thoughts. My thoughts are a part of me, but just because my thought says, you're a piece of garbage and you don't deserve anything, that does not make it true. That's just a thought that has been thought over and over and over again. Your thoughts, like, they have nothing new. There's no new material. It's like the same thoughts all the time. Like you think the same thoughts you thought yesterday, today, over and over and over again. And you are led to believe, again, by supposed to culture, that we need to be logical and we need to use our brains and we need to be analytical. And that leads us all to believe that we are our thoughts, that that's who we are. But in reality, thoughts are just like a Blockbuster video, like rewind, play them the next day, like rewind, play them the next day, like Groundhog Day. And once you start to notice, okay, like, let me take a look at my thoughts and let me start challenging some of these, because where did these thoughts come from? Whose thoughts are these? Whose story is this? Because so much of what we carry is the narrative of somebody else, the narrative of supposed to culture. Maybe it's, come through community, through your upbringing, through your parents, indoctrinated stuff, generational stuff. But like, where did this story come from? And being like, do I actually believe this? That's so much part of the journey as well too. Like, do I actually believe this thought? Is this what I know in my heart and my intuition, like with my intuition, to be true? Or is this somebody else's stuff and I've just adopted it and it's time for me to let it go? And you kind of start with the end in mind in a lot of ways, like starting with the outcome. Like, what is it you are hoping to achieve here? And many people are like, I have no idea. I just don't want to feel like I feel right now. Okay, cool. Let's start with that. Let's move towards that, not feeling how you feel right now. And let's get there a little bit at a time. And, it really just watching clients unfold and unravel and have these big aha moments. Like there is nothing like that feeling in the world. And every time I watch it unfold with every client, I'm like, this is what I'm meant to do. Like this is my true purpose in this world. Like this is my gift. This is my strength. This is my zone of genius. And watching it, walking that path with them, it's so incredible. And that's why I keep waking up in the morning, like what's going to happen today and whose story is going to unfold before my eyes, and just being a part of that is such a blessing. So I would never have found this purpose, this passion without my own therapeutic journey, without going through it myself, without having the spiritual awakening. It never would have happened. It had to start with enough is enough, and all of it unfolded. And this is funnily enough what brings me to today. You said bring you to today. And that's what all this work, all this stuff I've done with my own self, this evolution, and, supporting others to have the same is what brings me here today, obviously. But it's such a unique job, and it's just so profound in ways I could not ever articulate, to be honest with you. It's just such a privilege to be able to support these women. It's incredible.
So getting back to that one idea, and you have actually mentioned that it also applies to men, is there a reason apart from the business focus, so the supposed to business focus reason, to have that idea, I'm focused on a very specific area, which is the women's role in this, or the women's outcomes in this. But everything we've talked about applies to men. It applies to everybody. Every single individual on the planet is going through something in either extremes at the far end, or reaching bliss, whatever that is. But this applies to everyone. So why your focus? Like you say, this is your calling. This is where you're supposed to be. Maybe I shouldn't use that word.
Yeah, this is what I need to. My soul thinks, or my soul feels, is it's my soul purpose. There we go. That's what I was trying to get to.
I like that.
But in terms of working exclusively with women, and when I started this business, I was like, I'm going to help women and men and non-binary folks and children and grandmas, and I'm going to help everybody. And that's what it's a little bit difficult when you work in the online space the way that I do, and sort of from that business perspective, tailoring it down and understanding where, okay, this is where I work best, and these are the types of clients I work best with. Now, if a man reached out to me and said, I know you work exclusively with women, but I feel like a really deep connection to you, would you consider working with me? Then of course I'm going to entertain that. We're going to have a chat. We're going to talk. We're going to make sure that we mesh and we work well together.
Right.
But for the purposes of like having a focus in the online space, it was essential that I narrow. But if the right male client came along and we both naturally felt this was a good fit, right, there's always an option for that. And I do have men that follow some of my work online, some of my online communities and spaces, and they will always message me and say, I feel these things too. And they'll share their experiences. And I've done a couple of videos speaking specifically about men and what that looks like in the male perspective, and what I imagine it to be in terms of supposed to culture and what that looks like. Obviously, I don't identify as a man, so I couldn't put myself in those shoes specifically and speak to that experience, but I can certainly think about how supposed to in culture influences men, and I can see it playing out in my own circle and the relationships I have with men, family, my partner, and all this stuff. But yeah, if the opportunity presented itself and that's the way the path illuminates in that way, of course I'll go down that aisle. But from, like I said, and online, it's just, you need a little bit more of a focus.
Yep. Completely understand that from that's that externalization process of business and the world of making money and so forth. If money was out of the picture, would you do this kind of work where it's just you're helping people? Is this where it comes from within here, the idea of helping people grow beyond their structured norms that are not put in place by themselves? Is this like the calling within you, or has this evolved simply because it worked for you and you saw this as an opportunity to sort of, this is my business proposal. This is where I can actually support my family and feel happy that I'm a member of society, making the money and the impact that I need to make. Which path is like, I mean, is this business? Is this life? That's that spiritual, very extreme on the right-hand side of spirituality, where their role is simply to be for the purposes of others.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's not you because you're in your home and you have the family. You still have some of those structures of this as opposed to society, but you're absolving yourself of some of the others and you're aiding and helping. And it's a positive thing. I'm not admonishing any of that because people in society still need those structures. People in society still need to see you're normal, just like me, as opposed to, if you were sitting on a mountain on a rock and you had, weird clothing on or whatever, something different from them, and you were sitting and talking to them, they would feel disconnected. They would not see you as them. And that's, I think, for the majority, there's the word, of people, they need similarity. Otherwise, they will not take it as, oh, yeah, you're like me, you understand me. Most people will look at that and say, no, you're not like me, so you don't understand me. I'll listen to you, but there's something that's missing here.
Yeah. And I want to be relatable. And I want people to be able to relate to me. And I think too, that's why women gravitate towards me just in general as well too, because, they see them so like she'll understand she's a woman too. She'll get it, So I think that's why the majority of my clients, like, even if I hadn't advertised in that way, I think that naturally would have happened regardless.
Right.
But I think a lot of my clients that come to me like that I work only with women. There's something, for some reason, that gives them a sense of comfort for whatever the case may be. I know I had one client that I worked with that felt way more, because she had suffered a lot of like domestic abuse and abuse from men her whole life. There was something very safe knowing that I only worked with women, even though it was like, and we had to dig into that obviously and understand that, but that gave her a sense of comfort. So I think regardless if I advertised as just helping people or if I just staying with helping women, especially women empaths, like this would happen regardless, I think, because that's who I'm most relatable to.
And
I think
it makes sense. I get that. And yet our conversation, I feel you're relatable, period. You have an intellect. You have an ability to communicate. You have an ability to articulate your ideas in a way that others would understand, as opposed to just articulating them yourself. People are going, what is she saying? What is she talking about? You have the ability to sort of expound beyond yourself to help to reach out and have that communication, have that connection. And so for me, I hear it and I say, but I have no issues with you working with, you work with women or you work with men or you work with whatever. I'm just me. And I can see, if we were working together, I could see it. It's simple. It's a simple process. I don't see those issues, but then I'm unique, and other people, as you said, will look at you and go, oh, you work with guys too? I don't know if I want to deal with you, because who knows, you might share some stories. And in that thought comes the question that, do you, when talking with people, let them know they're not alone? I've heard this before, that kind of a statement where you're not alone in this experience that you're having. I know you feel that way, but I've dealt with a number of people that have gone through the same experience. Do you use that kind of verbiage with people to let them know what they're going through is not unique? It's unique to them, but not unique in the world, so that they don't feel like I'm, in my own little box and there's nothing else around me.
Yes. And it's funny you say that, because obviously I have an email list. I send out email broadcasts, different inspirational messages, things like that. And the bottom is always the same. And it's you are not alone. Because I think this can feel very isolating. I felt very isolated before I went to therapy. Like I felt like I was completely alone. Like I was the only human being that was having this experience in the world. Like nobody could understand, nobody gets it, nobody could possibly understand. And having that, and that's why, community for me is so important. And being somebody that shows up on social media, albeit sometimes it's exhausting, like completely exhausting to me. I do have a Facebook group as well too, that's got 1,000+ people in it, all those who identify as women, and just showing up in that community and making sure that these individuals know that there is someone there for them, even if they are just like a ghost in the group and don't say anything, but to know that they're not alone in this, to know that there are other people that are experiencing it, to know that they're in a safe kind of container, a safe space, keeps me going. Regardless of, sometimes I have to take breaks because I start to get burnt out, because it's like a never ending, like social media is like a gas tank that's never full. Like you can funnel gas into it as much as possible. And it's just like, I'm on empty, like just keep going. But I'll continue to do it because I want to be the person that makes other people feel like they're not alone, whether they're paying me or not, because obviously my community is a free community. The YouTube videos I put out are free. All this stuff is free, because I understand there's an element of privilege when you're working with a therapist. Not everybody has the financial means, but I want to continue to be somebody that inspires, to continue to be somebody that makes them feel like they're not alone, and to continue to be that person that they say, okay, maybe I can do things differently. Maybe it is possible that, things aren't exactly what I believe them to be. And I'm going to start challenging some of those thoughts. But yeah, I'm not sure where I was going with that, but that's where I got to. That's where the journey was.
I understand exactly how you got there. So that's my brain processing it, because we talk about the on the mountain being helping people without there being any ties to a financial requirement or anything like that. You are showing that you're both. You're living in both worlds. You are the free and open person to society, as well as for those individuals you work with, from that business perspective, that privilege, as you called it, but I would call it more of the capability, the ability to access you in that way. Yes. Others get to see you for free. And I can understand the concept of being burnt out. And I, as one of the thousands of people that probably inundate you, I apologize if you feel like you're being burnt out, if you feel like you're being drained, if the gas tank, well, is the cup half full or half empty? Now you're the water within the cup, feeling either I'm contained or I'm free flowing. So you can, there's a new way of looking at the cup half full. I'm no longer a cup. I am water. I am within, I am contained or not contained.
Yes. So, and this is not exhausting. This is exciting. This conversation's got me like vibing high. I'm going to like go and experience the world in a whole new way today, because this is exciting. This is what I'm passionate about talking about. So it's, and the funny thing is, like, I didn't even prepare for this. I'm like, I'm just gonna, and I sat here, I grounded myself before I got on this call. I asked for support from my spirit guides, my well ancestors, all these people to surround me, to allow me to articulate, to speak in flow, to be supported. And that's another part of, what I do before every client, before every interaction, before any presentation, meeting, whatever the case may be. Even if I'm filming a video, I ask for the support, and it's just the words are there. And that's another part of this. And it's just flowing because I'm passionate about it too. I get excited, and, like I said, I could talk for hours about this, but it'll be very long. People's attention span is
the nowadays people's attention span that are locked on their phones. And me, as I had mentioned to you before, my phone is for making phone calls and the occasional text from people that know how to use the text at my age group. Apart from that, that's all. So I'm not looking at me and technology, even though I have a technology background. I'm a person of the world now. Yes. But my last question to you, and it is probably one that's going to knock your socks off, in the sense that you've gone through a process of questioning your path, where you were, this opposed to society. Have you questioned your new path? Have you looked at change, or the desire for change, as situational? So when you were back then, there was a need to get out of what it was that you were in because of all the events that were around you. Do you feel you're going to be there again? Do you feel that this, possibly the impact of the hundreds or thousands of people that reach out to you on a regular basis, is slowly burning? Are you going to suddenly find yourself in another crisis moment of, this isn't where I'm supposed to be? I don't feel in the right place. There's something going on again, and I need to change me again. Is this something that's going to impact everything that you're currently involved in? Or do you already start to feel like it's encroaching? Do you already start to feel like, I am beginning to feel that thing again? I'm beginning to feel that change voice in my head again.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we had this conversation as well, too, when we were talking initially, is that the work never really stops, whether it's in, personal development or in business. Like, things have to evolve, like this was the initial stages of my business. This is where I was meant to be. I was doing what I needed to do. But of course, you're starting to feel like, okay, could this be a little bit different? Could this evolve into something different? Could this take a new path? And that's very scary, because then you're like, oh my God, I put all this work into this. And I to think about having to do it all again and break it all down, but you're not starting from scratch. There's a level of knowing, there's a level of understanding, a level of wisdom already there to be able to take it to the next level. And yeah, of course, I'm already thinking like, what's next for me? Because I love the client work I'm doing, but this experience I really love too, more speaking engagements, like speaking podcasts, different things. Like, I could absolutely see myself on a giant stage with 1,000 people in front of me. Just like, sometimes I think to myself, just give me a stage and put me on it, and I will inspire. I don't know. I might not know anything I'm going to talk about. I will probably go there with nothing, but I will figure it out and I will inspire. And that's sort of where the next iterations are coming with. Like, where can I take some of this knowledge of supposed to culture and this knowledge of all the client work I've done and be even bigger? And what does that look like? And how do I get there? And of course, as I'm starting to think that way, this opportunity comes. Isn't that interesting timing?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that, I'm starting to think that way. And all of a sudden I get this email and I'm like, well, that's very interesting timing, which is just like it's like I can't wink, but from the universe, that's like, I hear you, just keep going, follow the breadcrumb.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's already in the works thoughts of what does this look for? Like, what does this look like next? What's the next iteration of my business? Where am I meant to go to? And being able to understand, yeah, there's a lot of fear there because my ego is built. This is my new reality. Ego loves reality. And as I think about that, my ego's like, don't do that. Everything's wonderful and fine. And you're fine. And just do this. This is better. But as I've gone through my own personal development and spiritual growth and all that, I understand that fear is an element that is not going away. It's what do you do with it? Do you let it keep you stuck? Do you let it keep you right where you're at? Or do you say, okay, I always say, give your fear a hug. It's trying to protect you. Like, it's okay. I know you're scared, but let's just take the next logical step. Maybe the next logical step is as simple as turning my computer on and checking an email. Maybe that's the next logical step. And breaking it down like that.
Right.
So
do you break down the fear? Do you look at the fear and say, what am I actually afraid of? Do you look at it from the detailed perspective of, are you afraid of loss? Are you afraid of humiliation? Are you afraid of falling on your face? Are you afraid of, do you break it to the point where you're looking at it from a very logical perspective and saying, well, if I take this step, I won't have this. And, throwing the fear away and making it more aware of the situational conditions that are making you feel the way you feel. So it's more feeling than fear. Fear suddenly becomes feeling, and then feeling is understandable, and you can apply the things you need to make that feeling either not go away, but transition into something more positive, because fear is simply a negative perspective of a situation.
Right. And I had to learn a lot about fear. I had to understand the root cause of fear too. Like, what's at the root of this fear? And so much of my fear was connected to rejection and feeling like I was rejected when I was in school. And so much of it was connected back to my past and being like, I'm scared if I do this, if I take this next leap and I fall flat on my face, people are going to be like, like, look at you. You were so silly. Like, how, like, I can't believe you did that. Look at you, fell flat on your face. But what I've learned is that even if I fail or fall flat on my face, there's been a knowledge that's been gained. So to me, it allows me to walk hand in hand with fear, as opposed to being like, I'm just not going to do anything because that fear of rejection or fear of failure or fear of being made, like, being laughed at is a big thing for me. Right. I'm able to say, okay, like, even if all of those things happen, worst case scenario, what have I learned? What is my takeaway? Okay, maybe I've learned that this wasn't quite the right path. I just need to pivot a bit and take a new direction. But looking at where the root of the fear comes from, because for most of my client work, it's always like, I'm so scared, I don't want to do anything. Well, let's see where that story came from, because it's a story. Again, it's a story you've told yourself of, this is what failure means. This is what rejection means, and understanding, okay, well, I can alter this story to be like, all right, I might fail, but what if I freaking succeed? Mm-hmm. What if it goes to plan? What if it all works out?
Yeah.
And looking, because it's so much easier to look at the negative.
Yep.
It's like what we're trying to do. To look at the positive is different, and it's uncomfortable at first. But once you start talking in that way, like, what if this works out? What if, even though I'm uncomfortable, I, in 5 years' time, am standing on a stage with thousands of people and having a huge impact? Like, what if it works out? Yep. If I don't take any chances, and if I keep doing things the same way I'm doing now, I'm not going to even have an opportunity.
Yep. So you're leveraging fear. You're changing it from the warning, fear is a warning, to fear is a tool.
Yeah.
You leverage it. And you take it and you go with it. And yes, you can use that when you're talking to people.
Yes. I walk with it hand in hand, because 9 times out of 10, it's the inner child. So then you have to kind of take the hand of the inner child and be like, okay, we're going to do this together. I know you're scared. I got you. And here, we can do this. And there's the emotion again. I can feel like the tears welling in the eyes. Anytime I talk about my inner child, I tend to get emotional, but that's okay.
Yeah, it just shows that you need to hug your inner child a little bit more.
I tell my clients that all the time. Do not underestimate, like, the power of a self-hug. It's really powerful.
I'll do that myself. Although this is kind of tight, but that's
yes. Everybody give themselves a self-hug right now that's watching, and just say it's okay. Then you'd be surprised.
Well, it does. It actually helps. I do that on occasion. I'll just kind of go, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good
Got
today.
this. You got it.
Well, Marie, Denise, absolute pleasure talking with you today. I hope
Yes.
we get the chance to do this again. For you, I would say if you have a fear of being laughed at, you need to go and do improv on stage, and then you'll never fear being laughed at again. You'll just take it and go, all right, I'm good. You want to laugh at me? That's phenomenal. I'll do a little improv for you.
Yep.
But it's been a pleasure. I'm hoping that our audience, our listeners, have gleaned some information from this.
Mhm.
If people want to reach out to you, you are at Align and Balance Counseling.
Yes.
I'm giving you a plug.
Thank
Uh,
you.
they can look you up, Denise Marie, Align and Balance Counseling. You'll find her. She's the first link right on the line. So that's for those that want to reach out to you directly. Probably if they look you up, they can also find the places that you are on Facebook. And where else are you as well?
I am everywhere.
Oh.
Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Like I'm all over the place.
For myself, I've enjoyed this experience. It's given me a lot of thought, a lot of things to think about, a lot of things to have processed in my head. So I'll leverage that. And who knows, maybe I'll reach out again and we'll have another one of these conversations.
I would love that. Don't feel afraid to reach out to me again. I would love it. If I see your email, I won't be like, no, I'll be like, yes, do it again. All right. Thank you so much. I so appreciate it. This was amazing.
Thank you as well. And I look forward to seeing where you're going to go in the future. I really am.
Absolutely. All right. Cool.
Bye for now.
Bye.